Hello and welcome back to my channel. Following on from the finished utility video, I did promise that I would share a thorough step-by-step video on how we made this custom dog bath. So if you saw our finished utility video, you'll have seen that we were using IKEA furniture as our units. So the placement of our dog bath was in between a PAX unit and a Besta unit. However, this method that I'm going to share would also work if you were between two walls or between one wall and a unit. To create our dog bath, we had to start by building a frame. Using 3x2 stud timber, we made two rectangular frames which would create each of the sides of the bath. We made the depth the same as our unit so that everything along that wall would come out to the same place, keeping it nice and neat. The right side was being screwed into the wall and into the PAX unit to keep it rigid. As you will notice here, our right side is higher than our left side, but that isn't necessary for every dog bath. It's just something we had to do to provide more stability for our PAX unit, which was housing our washing machine and dryer. We hadn't decided on how high we actually wanted the bath, but as I bathed the dogs, I did think that I wanted it raised so that I wasn't hunched over something low. We also didn't want it too high because the dogs don't really like water, so they would be more inclined to jumping out and could injure themselves if it was too high. Simon used the tiles that we were going to be using to decide the level of the front so that the tiles would look neat on the front and not finish with any small cuts. There would just be two full tiles. Once the height was decided, we then made the base frame of the bath, again with the same 3x2 stud timber. We placed the waste unit inside the frame as it was being made so that we could determine where the support timbers needed to go. Once everything was in place, then all the holes could be drilled and screws used to fix everything together. Just for reference, we're using a mix of 50mm and 80mm screws, depending on the depth of wood and where they were being screwed into. The base frame could then be slotted into the two side frames to the measurement taken earlier. As you can see here, the two tile height is higher than the actual base level of the bath, and that's because you need the raised front of the bath to create a basin inside so that water doesn't pour out the front of the bath. The base frame was then levelled and screwed into place with a final level check at the end. As the plumbing was behind the Besta unit we had on the left-hand side, we made a support frame to go under that so that the unit could be removed for easy access to the pipework if needed. This additional frame was also screwed into the far wall, therefore providing an even more stable structure. We added some more supports to the frame vertically and on the floor, and then it was time for the tray to go in. We opted for a wet room tray, which is a tray that can be cut down to size and tiled. So after being cut down, it was adhered to the frame with silicone. Weddy board was then cut to size and silicone to the rest of the frame. Weddy board is a foam board covered with a cement resin coating with fiberglass mesh and is used for waterproofing bathrooms, wet rooms and showers. Weddy screws and washers were then drilled into the boards to ensure the maximum waterproofing and to provide a better fixing for the tiles. Here, a waterproof matting is being used to seal the corners and joins of the internal part of the bath to ensure that we don't get any leaks once the bath is filled with water. That needed to be left to dry before a waterproof tanking was then brushed onto the entire area inside the bath. This stuff is essentially like a brush-on rubber substance and requires two coats. Once the first coat is dry, it needs to be left for 24 hours before the second coat is applied and then left for a further 24 hours to fully dry. Once the tanking was fully dry, the bath was filled with water to assess if there were any weak spots causing leaks, which can be spotted by seeing bubbles. This would be mainly in the corners and joins of the weddy board. However, all was good with no leaks, so then the tiling could commence. Now, as I mentioned in the utility renovation video, we decided to use some leftover tiles from our ensuite renovation. So these tiles are from Capietra and they're called fondant. They have a matte finish with a slightly imperfect shape and texture to them, but you could use any kind of tiles for creating a dog bath. The bigger the tiles, the less you would need to use and the less cuts, but I would be careful with any patterned tiles as there are a few cuts needed inside the bath which could be difficult to line up the pattern. We also had white corner trim added to the edges for a neat and clean finish. The wet room tray that was laid inside the bath is sloped into the drain at the centre, so the tiles needed to be mapped out to ensure cuts were made in the right places to coincide with the slope. All tiles were cut and laid in place before actually being stuck down with tile adhesive. Once all tiles were adhered in place and left fully set, they were cleaned and then grouted and then cleaned 2 more times to remove any excess grout. White silicone was then used to seal all the corners inside the bath, just as an extra precaution against potential leaks. We decided to have our tap and our shower hose installed into the worktop on the left-hand side, where the pipework had been run, and we chose a shower fixture which has a hidden hose. The hose sits under the surface when not in use, so that always keeps it neat and tidy. So here is my original drawing of the dog bath. And then here is how it turned out. We're really happy with how it turned out, and although we did have our friend Callum, who is a plumber by trade, come and help with the tiling and tanking, we do think that we could have achieved this ourselves and only had him come and do the plumbing. But when it comes to anything involving water, we are always a little bit dubious to do things ourselves through fear of leaks. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.